Transcript and other.
I was thinking I'll attend. One I was very curious about was the annihilation of casting. I did not wake up in time to get ready and come here. I'm curious about the law panel tomorrow. Just tomorrow. Yeah, I think I'll attend whatever law panels. Like the New York panel, whichever else you want. You not like the events you attended? I think the problem you're thinking, I know, I feel like know who you're addressing in international conferences, in international workplaces. At times you make very more foundational points.
Should have started by. Because it is not. Yeah,
how do you overcome it? We did that similar conversation that we had a lot of times.
But if you hear for
Yeah, Himanshu's organizing it.
yeah, he has the red pen.
Ajo. Discussing the law panel tomorrow. Today? Anup के साथ.
That's what
कल नहीं होगा. Did you get to meet him? No. You intend to? No, I didn't have to. यार उनके कुछ बोल देना. Oh, when like when you the high court.
So what is nice?
The recent interview with the EU. 12 years ago. Oh shit. And yeah, you managed to stay in touch.
Clearly not, but whatever. We connected. No.
Yeah, कोई वो तो नहीं होगा like there's no conflict there, right?
You try to avoid it, especially if you clerk.
Clerk.
Is it the same bullet?
I that's the real. Oh, I have this link that.
Yeah, like download the app.
Can you call Shreya?
Yeah, wait 1 second.
श्रेया हाँ और उसका उसका जो पब्लिक जूमिंग है ना वो भी उस पे डाल दो नहीं पब्लिक जूम छोड़ो मत डालो बस आप अली को पोस्ट और रिजेक्ट करके तो पोस्ट कर दो वो कंफर्म है ओके नहीं नहीं है उसका पोस्ट बना दो ठीक है और वो सुनो हेलो श्रेया श्रेया No, point.
You need help with something?
Hello?
Let me outside Deepak. Thing. She's here.
Good afternoon, namaste, and welcome everyone. My name is Deepak Ramola, and I have the incredible honor of leading this conversation today with an esteemed guest, but also a very dear friend. Apoorva and I go back all the way to 2009 for our first meeting in Mumbai. But even before that, because her mother was my school Hindi teacher. And a lot of my writing and speaking prowess is credited to your mom. But over the years with Apoorva, I have shared the relationship of being a close friend, a work colleague, a fellow dreamer, a cheerleader. And today, as we all get to hear her incredible journey, I'm so delighted to speak to her in an avatar in which she has created a niche for herself and paved the way for so many young women all across India and all over the world. Apoorva, welcome, first of all. We, of course, when we're thinking about this conversation and this fireside chat, I had a really hard time thinking last time, how should I introduce you? Because my book, I actually dedicated to Apoorva and my sister. And in the book, I have a whole chapter where I write about Apoorva and how I've gotten to know her over the years. So let me first introduce her as a human being, a friend. I write in the book to a question, who would you want to be a witness to your life? I picked Apoorva and I say, she is not a flower, swaying with the wind, caressed by the gentle touches of a fragrance that emerges out of a transitory inheritance. She is instead a forest, wild with its own chase of all the possibilities it holds within, carved by the depth of existence and in awe of its own legacy. That is Apoorva to me. And so, to top that personal introduction, with really the role that we are speaking to you today as one of the most prolific rising producers from South Asia, leading a global conversations. Thank you for the water. I think most people in the room might be aware that you have many beautiful accolades behind your name. You are actually the first Indian producer to win the International Emmy for a Best Drama Series. You are somebody who has championed national award winning films, led movies like Gangs of Wasipur all the way to Cannes and higher distribution of indie cinema. But in all of this role, what we want to unpack today is how did you do this all with that big smile, being a mother, and in being a catalyst for so many people who didn't believe in themselves in the first place. So, welcome with that introduction.
Now you know who to invest in as a friend and as somebody who champions you from the very beginning because he's literally my retirement plan. That's what I've said since he was 17. I was 24 and he came up with this whole idea of Project Fuel, which we can talk about later. But thank you for such an incredible introduction. I haven't heard these words for a long time about myself, but yeah, it's been an honor and it's been a privilege and it's been a responsibility. Is all I can say. Boils down to a lot of like storytelling. You know, I think each one of us are storytellers in our own way, and some of us find our outlets on Instagram or written pages in our own journals, in books like yours or films, which became the strongest medium with which I could relate to. I remember a photograph of me, I think I was a year old, and the television, my dad bought a television because 84 was, there was some World Cup around that time. And I literally like catapulted backwards to watch TV. So I think my affection towards the medium started really early. And you can see that. I think it stimulates your mind in a very different way. Um, and bottom line is, we'll obviously go into specifics, but uh, my curiosity, I think, was the biggest. It runs in my veins. I owe it to my great grandmother, who was also a very curious human being, and she lived up to be 100. So it really, I feel like, you know, when you reach an age of 100, you've literally seen the world. She like walked the satyagraha with Gandhi ji and then went with Anna Hazare on his walk, right? So it's really that kind of span, and I think her curiosity led her to not going to school but being able to read the newspaper on the last day of her life and say that Michelle Obama is a rock star and the power behind Obama. Like this was her, you know, discourse with me on the last day of her life. So I feel like curiosity really pushed uh, the pushed the envelope for me to be able to hunt for stories that were very meaningful. And trust you me, I'm a diehard Bollywood fan. Okay, like oh Pathan. Like I don't know if you guys have seen it, but guys, like make time for SRK because he looks like a bloody dream. The thing is that when I decided, so I my intention was always to facilitate, right? I was always finding ways to figure out how to be able to tell our stories in the most authentic way and be appreciated for the rest of the world. I don't care if they don't get Pathan, but I wanted to make a niche for myself where people understand our world beyond the very Eastern, I'm sorry to use the word porn that that gets sold, right? The yellow skies. If you see anything that is shown in Grey Man or even Russo brothers, everybody just shows our side of the world as yellow, muddy skied, you know, terrain, and everything is so elephant driven and snakes driven on the street. So there were a lot of independent films, but they were independent films wouldn't travel at all. So storytelling started with first finding ways to discover people like Anurag, right, and Guneet, and asking them what they were doing. So because they were getting appreciation from across the world, but nobody was watching. the material. Gang still did well, but there is a haram core and there is a ugly and there are these smaller gems that were not getting discovered. So when I did pivot out from being a studio girl, which was Sony Pictures, like Amazing Race Asia and magic shows and all of that stuff, which is so lifestyle driven and reality driven. When I discovered Anurag's deeper work and Guneet's entire indie gang. I call them gangs of Aram Nagar. I don't know if Bombay people get that reference, but it's like Aram Nagar is all independent strugglers, okay? Filmmakers who are making films literally taking truckwala's money, but not getting distribution. And my biggest win was that I went to them and I said, I have no money to give you, but I will take your films and let me hold that portfolio for a year and I'll come back to you with some kind of a distribution structure. And that was 2013, and Netflix was about to launch their global platform. And I went to Netflix and I said, told Ted Sarandos that whatever you give to one Salman Khan film, right? Whatever license fee you give to one Salman Khan film, give it to me for 40 independent films. So I'll give you 40 films and you just test it out, right? I think that was the biggest one because films came out of the can, they got real money and they were seen worldwide in a switch of a button. And from there, gangs, I don't know if anybody was in the United States at that time, I rehashed Gangs, got 2 films into 8 episodes and released it as a season here. And that did very well, which got Anurag Sacred Games as a commission. So there was these small efforts in trying to understand where is the need gap before I decided that, okay, now I know what kind of stories do I like. And I love Kejo and Adi for doing what they do. They make Pathan and they make Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, and that's their prowess. I don't want to compete there. But where do I find my niche in stories that nobody wants to tell? And we'll go deeper into Delhi crime, but it all it definitely was never going to happen. I can guarantee that. We went to everybody. Do you want me to transition?
I was
now?
about to say, Apoorva has covered 6 of my questions already. So this is a very easy interview to do.
If it's interesting to you guys, we can just free flow that way. But you can let's make it interactive, okay? If you have any questions, just pause in
Absolutely.
between.
But
right?
I actually, even before you delve into, I mean, it's still an enigma too. And I've been such a close witness to seeing all of this unfold, but it's still an enigma. So my next question, more so for me and for the larger audience watching us, is what does a producer do? I mean,
Yeah.
this might be like a tutorial for 101 producer, but if you can explain, when one imagines the role of a cinematographer, you know what a cinematographer does, what an editor does, what an actor does. What does a producer do? Do you just pump in the money, or are you mostly, as portrayed in films, male, this character screaming at directors for
Casting couch.
casting couch and things like that? Who is a producer, Apoorva, and how have you seen that definition evolve with your work?
Very important question, and I think for times to come, this clarification is always going to be required because from the outside you get a very glamorous understanding of how this industry works, but it actually is very process driven, intensely process driven. To make that one day of shoot happen, 180 people to crew can go up to 500 people have to work in sync, and that's why you see every set starts with a nariyal, a coconut breaking right on top, and an homage to Ganpati because it is absolutely a miracle to make a day happen. What does a producer do? What are your perceptions? Just throw it at me. What do you think a producer does? Okay, money.
Puts together a project.
Puts together a project. So project management for the techies.
Yeah, and also distribution.
So puts together the project and then distributes.
Gives life to a script.
Interesting.
Brings in the right people together.
Yeah, I would say the biggest one is the conductor of the orchestra, right? That's the closest analogy I have been able to figure out. And I played a lot of parts to be able to figure figure it out myself as to what all do you do. But a producer lives the longest with the project, even beyond the writer director, even beyond the person who conceptualized the story. So it, traditionally in our country, where cinema is such a big revolution and it is almost in our blood, it is our need, it is our desire, and it is what drives a lot of our ambitions as well. Producers traditionally would hold a studio, a studio status, where they would also finance a lot of the productions and hold the end-to-end bargain of distribute right from conceptualizing, holding rights till the end. Independents were very rare and few. A lot of Bengal was pumping independence. A lot of South was pumping independence. There were families that owned this business earlier because it was not, and it didn't have an industry status till early 2000. The money was really pumped by the mafia. The entertainment industry was shunned. In our country, do you realize in our country we are a billion plus population, more than a billion point seven, I think. Do you know how many screens are there in our country? Just give me a number, throw a number.
70,000.
70,000.
5,000.
Really, but there are exactly 9,430 screens in our country. Can you believe that? So we might be the most, uh, we might be the most important audience for this world, because despite having only 9,000 odd screens, and those are including single screens, right now multiplexes are coming in. There was a rule till 2000 that you couldn't build a cinema school within a kilometer distance of a school or a mandir. And our temples are like the tree. You put a Shivji ka murti under a tree, and it's a temple. It's considered a temple, right? So when you have such restrictions, because the industry was considered, not a clean industry. Dance and music was not given its own stature and status unless until you were from a gharana speaking, singing. You're not doing it in the right spirit, right? So coming back to what a producer really does is in a new age producer is, yes, financing is a very important part, but that's not all, right? Financing can be, how do you structure financing, how do you build waterfalls, and these are terms that I can explain more. But for example, how do I bring a group of people to believe in a project who will privately finance it, and then from that point in time to take responsibility for every dollar that comes in, how it is spent, how does the creator's vision really get realized in terms of giving him his heads of departments, then syncing on it, and then deciding a production schedule. While doing that, you're creatively also honing the script and making sure that it's not just the manifestation of what they want to tell, but it also is relatable to the audience. And then going into shoot, then post production, which is really where the film gets cooked, and then distribution, and then taxes, and then living with the IP or parting with the IP, considering now that the outlets are studios are really buying outright, right? Or rights for the universe, not even world. So the job of a producer really, the reason why a best picture or best show goes to a producer is because you bear the maximum responsibility of seeing it through, and you also bear the responsibility of financials ups and downs. In terms of, if you go budget, it's your responsibility to fund it. So that's what a producer does in totality. And then a producer also has to share their credit, so they're lead producers, and they're, so my producing team, I have 18 producers under me on a show like Delhi Crime, because there will be a line producer, there'll be a creative producer, there'll be a post producer. So there's different roles that get defined in our department, but we are a full robust team ourselves. Um, Having said that, I share a credit, my own credit, with 5 other people who are just financiers. So it's really, I feel like that's a push that we are making within the industry, that financiers should be segregated from producers, because they don't really they just put the money and they back us, and it's very important, but the work gets done on the ground by lead producers.
That's a very good definition. Sounds like you do a lot of work in the role of a producer, which is fair enough. Yes.
I just had a question. From all your years and experiences of producing, are there certain factors that you look for in a project that give you optimism that it will succeed versus not? Like, what kind of filter or recipe do you use now for selecting things to work on?
And before you answer that, I'm going to piggyback my next question onto that. How do you filter a bad script? Everybody, I'm sure, on at the airport, in restaurants, after you've made Delhi Crime, has a script for you, right?
If this room does not send me a script by the end of the week,
You'll be
it's a
surprised.
fail. It's a fail. Very good question. Um, it's been it's very I don't have that kind of difficulty in uh, actually can you can you iterate it against the order, answer it in the order that you asked?
Um,
How do I filter my project?
yeah, like how do you pick projects that you want to invest your time and energy in?
So the biggest uh, I really don't go on profiles of the or the experience of the directors. I read the pages. So even if it's an Anurag or a Richie, I read their next project pages and I say, okay, there's potential or not. So I think I rely a lot on the script. And of course, then you layer it with the experience of having worked with these creators and or how they have worked in the past and what could they do, right? A similar gangster, uh, cop, dance bar girls story from Anurag will not challenge me enough, and I would say a no to it, which he comes back with every time because that's his comfort zone. But it's very important that they are reinventing themselves. The creators are reinventing themselves. I think there's a lot of. I've also been very privileged to have received content and scripts that are very powerful. I feel like the creators are also very, very choosy now with the kind of producers they want to work with because they want the producers to back their vision and not let it get diluted at every stage, right? With platforms coming in, with more people in the room or in the cockpit, it's a short recipe to really lose the vision with which you want to which you set out to achieve when you produce films. What I narrowed down as a personal manifesto when I launched Audacious, which is the banner that I produce under now, was that I will invest in scripts and written word that stops you in your tracks and makes you think and feel more deeply. So that's literally what I'm genre agnostic, format agnostic, uh, duration agnostic. It could be any form, any format. And if the written word, like when I read Delhi Crime, the reason I decided to produce with such a magnum opus project was because I started out reading as a courtesy. You know, he's a friend. And I was like, okay, let me read. He's asked for feedback. So I'll start reading it. I started at 11 p.m. that night. And by 2 a.m., I couldn't drop. I just couldn't leave those magnum opus essays that he had written. And they were not even screenplays, they were like essays. And it was like 300 pages. And I kept reading till morning. And I had had different kind of reactions. I vomited, I had hope, I cried, I was I was like, okay, go get them. And when the pages could turn you so emotional, I figured that this piece would just be absolutely magnificent on screen. And I knew the discipline with which Richie worked in the past. He'd made just two very small films by then. But you know that I had distributed he was one of the 40 that I distributed. So we bonded a lot over material. And I called him and I said, I don't care if I've never produced, but this is something that I'm gonna make this has to be going on screen. He's like, nobody's buying it. And then of course I'll talk about the challenges of Delhi Crime. But coming to your question now, you know, no script is a bad script.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, there is an idea. It could be unauthentic, like not authentic. It could be a borrowed idea, and but everybody gives it a spin. It's just that's what lack of research, right? Will make it a bad script. A concept could be great, but a lack of research would be make it a bad script. Something original rarely comes by, to be very honest. It is always the best of borrowed ideas or inspirations, and then you rehash it and make it authentic with more research and your own lived experiences. uh, a bad script is really the attitude of the creator. I feel like you could have an excellent script and an extraordinary material, but because of the attitude of the creator, that project will not see the light of day the way it deserves to. And I can guarantee there's a film called Joyland. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's one of the best debuts I've seen in the past 5 years. Gully Boy, Delhi Crime. When you sit down with the creators like a Zoya or a Saim, and you sit down and you hear their experiences, you are like blown away because it's very similar to what I experienced in Delhi Crime. And that is a big testament to the fact that anything that reaches that trajectory of global appeal, all of us have had a very similar experience in our journeys. And that commonality is what makes it a great material. But bad scripts can turn into good scripts. It's just openness of feedback and not getting stuck and not letting a borrowed inspiration o- overtake your ambition to just put your voice out there instead of listening to what the realm is seeking.
Is that why you don't call yourself just a producer or a storyteller, but a story engineer? That's a title that's often associated with Apoorva in the industry, that she's not just a producer or a creative producer, she's a story engineer. And maybe turning a bad script into a good one or a compelling one
Mm.
is part of that engineering, I assume.
I did that a lot for 2 3 years. I'm not stopping. I'm going to stop doing that because it takes a lot of effort. But I like the term engineer because it's very strategic as to how do you put a development process in place. And you'll be really surprised that people think it's a very creative, like people will go into their own realms. Oh, we work on Excel sheets. Literally, our story grids are like, so I've and that's something that I've actively introduced into the writers' rooms because um you don't get stuck then, right? You're happy to kill your favorite parts, you're happy to let go of. And episodic viewing has really changed the way creativity percolates on paper now when it comes to film and television. So we work on Excel sheets. I like the term I'm not an engineer, my husband is a techie, but the fact is that story engineering is a very new tool that people are using. Masterclass really opened up a Shonda Rhimes engineering style or Aaron Sorkin's engineering style, but it's really to grab from there the tools that you have, active tools that you have, and if you apply those, any piece of writing can be turned around. So, for example, I recently story engineered the legal drama show, which is going to be coming out in 2 years, but it's getting started now, which is a genre that's not explored in India a lot, right? We only have one show on Prime right now. That was literally two litigators from Bombay High Court called me and said, "We have written something." Because you are such a believer in research and authenticity, we would like to present a show to you. And they came with to dare to give them full credit. They wrote 30 pages, which is rare, and it was good. It was good in parts, and it lacked the character development in some. But from then, those two litigators every Friday night for 2 years sat with me and developed it with two other writers, developed it into a robust series now. So that's how engineering
you've
works.
you've sort of orchestrated it together. I want to take it back to the Delhi crime conversation because I played a very small part and it
Yeah, you did
revealed
play a
a
small part.
huge thing for me, which I want to share. I probably played a very difficult role, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
in the
yeah.
series. I was asked by Apoorva and Richie, who's the director, to narrate the episodes of Delhi crime to the parents of actual Nirbhaya at a police station, because as conscious producers and makers, they wanted the consent of the parents, but also an awareness of how this story was not going to be a provocative story of the incident, but really about what unfolded. And as I don't remember how young or old I was, but as 25, 26 something, sitting in a police station reading those stories and telling somebody how that happened when they already know it, I, I remember going back home to Dehradun and thinking, oh my God, this is so hard. Just one evening of it. You having done and immersed yourself in that world from the 300 pages and having that reaction to actually meeting global audiences, to having those difficult conversations around such sensitive topics. Where did your courage find roots in telling a story as Delhi Crime?
It's a very powerful question. First of all, acknowledge the fact that we needed somebody who could speak in Hindi and be empathetic, right? Richie can literally, he's born, brought up in Canada, so he had a zero skill set. And the moment he started narrating, I was like, just stop, right? Because it's sounding funny, and you cannot do that to the parents. So he took a overnight, I think,
Bus ride.
bus ride
And I was
from
translating the episodes in the bus
from there.
from
I was
Dehradun
like,
to
this
Delhi.
cannot be done by anybody but him, because you just needed an empathetic voice in the room saying we're not going to commercialize this entire intent, because a lot of people have wanted to tell that story. It's not, we were not the first ones. And the courage, I'll tell you very honestly, this wasn't very important story. It was beyond my uh, it's not just my responsibility. I feel like all of Delhi should have told this story, right? And I'm an army kid, so for me, I love my country. I absolutely love my country. And for me to discover the fact that there are only 70,000 cops uh, really protecting the 20 crore population that lives in Delhi, and out of which 70,000, 30,000 are on traffic duty and special aid to politicians. I just couldn't fathom that, when that lathi, when these thulla, we call them, right? They come out with a lathi to terrorize people on the streets. It's because they cannot manage. If the crowd takes over, that one cop is handling 7 lakh people. The ratios are insane, right? Like one cop handling 70,000 people is just it's impossible to do preventive policing. And these kind of facts were, I was a part of the whole protest, and I was enraged. My younger sister went on a walk across the country fighting for violence against women. It just it just hit me very hard that how could we be so unaware of the challenges that our law enforcement agencies go through. We're so quick to judge. And a lot of it came because my dad served the army till he was a general, right? It was just came as a very, you asked me where does your optimism come from. It was like I have militant optimism that we can, if I decide that we are going to that there is a team that I can put together and we're going to make things happen, we're going to make things happen. So I didn't think it was my responsibility alone or my courage alone. I think it was a huge a lot of people, including you, played their parts to be able to make it happen. And I think each one of us needs to have that courage. I'm sorry, grow that courage. Because if you don't speak up today, then a lot of things that are happening in our country, I feel like there's an undeclared emergency going on. And despite better counsel, I will say it. There is an undeclared emergency going on in our country. There is a problem when legal counsels come and sit in creative meetings. It's a big indicator that our freedom of speech is in danger, right? And and I feel like there's no place for people who don't have courage anymore in this world, in any industry, not just not just ours. Like AI is taking over, guys. You look, like half my writers are going to be out of job because
Chat GPT is going to be writing your
no,
scripts.
I did receive a full project listed out by Chat GPT. Can you believe that? And that was the USP. Can you believe it? We wrote these 5 prompts and a full show concept along with a Bible, a 10-pager concept and a Bible populated in 5 minutes. So you can imagine the uh, the perils of the metaverse, the future of our world, what's happening with just climate change. Everything is like you need to have courage at every step, every step of the way right now.
So the way I'm hearing is your courage anchors itself to the challenges of our times and sort of builds this ecosystem where stories such as Delhi Crime and all the other projects that you're making can be built. But we all are storytellers in this room. I know just by virtue of the people who are sitting here, some I know, some who study here, we all are storytellers. And having worked with hundreds and thousands of people from across the globe, what would you say to us to find that courage? What do we or most storytellers in the world today need to know?
Be authentic, do your research, and send your first worst draft out in the world. Don't let it sit in your inbox or your laptop. Whatever form of content you want to write. It could be a journal piece, it could be a open letter, it could be a voice of protest. It could be anything. Don't let it sit and marinate in your own brain. Put it out there. It could be the first worst draft. It could only get better with feedback. It could only get better with collaboration. But it needs to be out there. A bad script that is out there is better than a good script in the inbox. It's as simple as that. So that's one. And subtitles.
Who would have thought?
Nobody really pays attention to that. Like that's my biggest. I think as a producer, that's I sit last on the project, and I make sure even if it's a Netflix or an Amazon or HBO, whichever platform it might be, that's my fight. That the last person to sign off on the final output that goes on screen is me, and I check for only subtitles. Why? Because you and me might not have like now we are so used to it because we are the most adaptive bloody generation in the whole century, but the younger millennials are watching everything only through subtitles, right? Even English content is watched with subtitles, and that to me is the only way to reach a global audience. If your subtitles are not idiomatically correct and they're not communicating the intention of the scene, you've lost that particular pocket of audience, right? So that's what I do. For Delhi Crime, Richie and I sat till like 4 a.m. We were going live at 12 a.m. 12 p.m. the next day. At 4 a.m. we were checking every line so that the intention with which the scene was written is globally relatable, and it at least lands with the way we wanted it to land. So yeah, subtitles very underrated as a tool to travel.
Well, we know now we have to better subtitle and not just like translate, not just Google Translate our scripts.
Yeah.
Apoorva, there's another question that's coming to mind is how do the stories you want to tell different from all the ones that are there or that everybody in the industry is making? How are these stories different and how do you aspire to keep them different?
A lot of my stories are very either created by women or centered around women as protagonists or the protagonists who are supported by women. I think it's the essence of life. I think all guys should admit and just surrender to that thought. But no, that's not the real filter. I think I'm really I am very inspired, and somehow a lot of these powerful stories do land up on my table. But how do I really differentiate it is I play in my own field. Like I've created this entire niche for myself, and a lot of people are joining this tribe, trying to work in that space itself. There's a Patal Lok, which was very provocative, that came out. Trial by Fire, which was a recent release, is also been in the same space. Dhuin, and then I can give you names that you might not even recollect, but you should try to find these films. uh, I'm not the leader for sure, but I have a huge tribe coming along with me. I just got the Emmy. That's I think that was the reason that I was put on the map. But I'm doing everything in my power to be able to continue building these writing room spaces, because a lot of our country is really applauded for a lot of technical skills that we've built. VFX, like, look, must. It looks like a Marvel movie. Excuse the story, which Ayan completely missed out on. But oh my God, this is getting recorded. He's a very dear friend. But the thing is, I told him to his face that he can do better in the next edition. But the thing is that look at the technical prowess reached, and so what's required right now are the story hubs. How do you develop fresh talent from the ground? And how do you make Doordarshan the best OTT? Why not?
The OG.
Yeah, the original gangster of the entire like our entire industry is built on those three circles and na 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 the tunes, right? And I suggested that to the INB minister this time, that please bring back all that content and see how it will thrive, because that's the largest reaching uh, platform across. But narrowing down the stories, Deepak, I really don't. I'm still building it up. Let's say I'm work in progress in there, that I will absolutely know what I'm not going to touch, even with the log line. Um, and But that's I've not reached that stage of saying no. My biggest filter is the creator, the energy of the creator,
The attitude.
attitude, and the work. The just all my creators are crazy. They are ready to lose literally their lives to tell their stories.
Tell their story.
Yeah.
You're also somebody who is not afraid to ask for help, play both the leader role in the room, but also the follower, and uh, pick amazing mentors. I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that you have received in your journey that has really, I mean, we see you as this confident boss woman. What advice has helped navigate this path?
Very, very good question. And there are so many. But I'll tell you the first one.
Okay.
Uh, this was from Chio, I call her lovingly, but Shruti Mahapatra, who mentors IAS trainees, and she became a family friend, and that's how I was exposed. I was 19, and she said that you're going to go out into the workforce. I was one of those kids to like I graduated out of Xavier. I went to Micah straight away. Just like no work experience in between. Get my education packed in. I'm a year ahead of my age, so the youngest postgraduate in the class. Um, she said, "Don't talk to hierarchies. Like, greet your doorman at the Sony Pictures reception with the same kind of respect that you would do to a CEO, and that has served me so well. Because people rise, people go to places, and they remember. They remember. I think one of my biggest strengths, and that's something that is obviously all of you here are very accomplished. Uh, you are students, but you have your accomplished careers behind you. But that's something that I pass on every time I meet a cohort of a group of individuals. That what served me the best was I never spoke to hierarchies, and that built a network which is constantly growing and thriving. And people remember.
You're loved by your spot boys as much as you're loved by your platforms.
I have clean like this. When I felt like people were getting delayed on set, I used to be the first one to reach. So you could see that everybody is WhatsApping, and there's a frenzy going on. That there's a producer going on set right now, and we all need to, ramp up. But I would not hesitate cleaning up the set as well, because that's something that we were very conscious. Richie and I would be literally picking trash after the set, because
But
we
also checking
create
in. I
trash.
have also seen Apoorva ask the spot boys at the end of a back-breaking shoot day, Dada, have you had chai?
Because they
You
serve
know,
chai all the time.
and when the show gets over, I think that's what they remember, not just the project, but the people. And I think
Yeah.
not speaking to hierarchies is a powerful one.
They were my spies. They go everywhere across the set. So I had to keep them very, very happy. When we got the Emmy, they were the first ones I called. I said, there's a film fair that gets like that is the film fair of the world. We've got that. I was like, oh, thank you so much for calling. Nobody cares about, but they were literally they were like, you should go to this department. We will not tell you what is happening there, but you should go now, and it really helped, right? So they were my favorite people on the set. But yes, don't not talking to hierarchies has really served me well, and it is truly an experience to be like a family, because there's no ego, you're trying to serve the script, and nobody cares who you are. Everybody just focuses on making the day happen. So
Amazing. I have two more questions, and in the interest of time, I want to open it up to the room as well. Very quickly, where were you when you heard that the show had won an Emmy, and you guys were the first people to win for Best Indian Drama, this international Emmy award? Where were you?
So it was a virtual event. And
COVID.
Yeah, it was
Centric.
COVID and centric, and it was a virtual event, and I was sleeping actually. So I'd birthed a gorgeous, gorgeous baby. She's 3 years old, but she was 9 months at that time, and for the mothers or people who know moms or our dads here, uh, it's crazy the first 9 months, right? I was sleeping, literally, when before Richie called me and woke me up and said, "Okay, we won the Emmy." And I was like, "Oh, what?" It was.
Thank you. And now I need to change the diaper. I'll call you right back.
No, I was pumping. But the thing is that it settled in a while. It didn't. We didn't understand what it meant till the time. Uh, the day passed by and you figured, okay, this is the first time it has happened. Um, and to be very honest, my wow moment was not the winning of Emmy, because I always had this vision. There's a literally on record. There was a first day on shoot. We were like, me and my cinematographer, who's a 27-year-old genius boy, Johan Eiderton. We were sitting there and he was like, he's the one who made sure that you felt like you were in the room while the investigation was going on. He's like, this one's gonna really win the Emmy. This guy's crazy, and what we're doing is crazy. And it's like, yeah, sure. So Emmy wasn't the big win, but do you want to know what was the big wow moment? Wow moment was that we were struggling. We were on edit, and we had shot 8 episodes of Delhi Crime. But I don't know if you remember, you saw 7. The first two, the first one was set up, build, right? And the second was investigation. And it was just not landing. Like, it was not building that vortex that pulls you in and then keeps you sucked in so that you go through the bridge. And that idea I gave to Rich. I was like, he was like frustrated. The editor was, we were sitting in this room, and I was like, what if we club the first 2 episodes, we lose the fat, and we keep the meat, and let it be a 70-minute, let it be a 65-minute, whatever duration it is, let it be a longer episode, but let's create that vortex. And I think that was like this wow moment, because Beverly, who's a very senior editor, she's like, I'm such a big fangirl of hers. And Richie, like, I could see the eyes, glint. And that was my wow moment, because I think that was first time that I figured that I'm a story engineer. And the fact that not only am I identifying scripts, I'm adding value to the journey as well. And then everything after that was just the way it was received. I had expectations. It obviously surpassed everything. I thought it would be really recognized for its grit, but I didn't realize that it will have such insane commercial success as well as critical success. Critics would appreciate it as well.
The interesting thing is that your personal moment of success is, which I think is a producer's nightmare. We shot 2 episodes and now let's crunch it to one. And it speaks a lot about how you want to do justice to the story. My last question is, you're creating a show today that might release 3 years later. How do you predict success? And a lot of us who are studying at the Kennedy School, at the Ed School, at the Design School, at the Business School, or anywhere here, we are studying for today in the hope of tomorrow, and that tomorrow might be 3 years later. It's very similar to an analogy to your work. You're picking and investing in a script today, which might release 5 years. How do you ensure success?
I think that's where that's where the prolific part comes. Like I don't take that word lightly when it's attached to my name. uh, I think to be able to identify, there are so many times you say the script is ahead of its time or this film is ahead of its time. Um, i- it's that identifying the right time and being patient with your pieces, right? I think a lot of people say, "Oh, we've got the script, we got to get it made in the next 1 or 2 years." Platforms, when they throw this analogy of, oh, the trends are saying, the analytics are saying, the data is talking to us, as like the data is talking to you about today. If you start infusing that input into the scripts today, how do you know that the same data would apply 3 years from now? Because that's the time that it takes to produce a show. It takes 3 years from scratch to delivery, right? So I think this is a constant conversation right now. It's a very interesting question, but that's where the prolific part comes. That's where your insights come. That's where you can understand my entire job is to look at a script and say, how do you first of all make it timeless? How do you? That's a short, safe way of playing it. That make it timeless. Try to make a classic. Try to make something that will become a classic, right? And that's become a signature move as well from my side. That things will that will not that will that will serve the 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 angst, the emotion, the success, the feeling of accomplishment for anybody who goes through that viewing experience. A wholesome experience is what you are gunning to achieve, and that identifying that trend is going to make those pieces. But it's very tough. It's very tough. I'm not saying I'm hitting the mark on every piece, but that's a very big filter. That's the overarching. Like whenever we welcome a project into audacious slate, it's checked on all those fronts.
So data plus intuition plus right team sounds like a formula for a good Netflix show. All right. Uh, all right. We're going to take two questions in the interest of time. Okay. We start here and then go.
Questions outside. I'm very interested to hear
Yes.
from you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak. Apoorva, I have a million questions, but I'll just borrow the one behind your screen. What is your vision for India in 2047 at 100 years of independence? And what would you tell producers to do to achieve that vision?
I feel like we are a superpower. I think that word has been used a lot. I think we can be my hope, because of my role, is really bent on us becoming mm, better storytellers, us telling our stories much, much more authentically. Like the whole turmeric revolution, the whole yoga, how they call it here. I'm sorry, but these are our stories to tell, right? When they say I'm an expert, I actually tell them I'm not an expert. I'm actually going to focus my energies on telling our stories with our people in the most authentic way. And that's the biggest hope for that future. In 2047, I feel like we're not only technically we are a superpower, but I think in way of expression, in way of freedom, in way of protecting our uh, identities is very crucial right now. I think that's where we are struggling, not only for the women in our country, but just generally, you know, who we identify is should be always our choice, individual choice. And I think that's something that I hope that our country really navigates through. I'm a militant optimist, so I will never think negatively about where we are headed, but that's where I believe we should be going.
Thank you. Let's take one more question. Yeah. And maybe, yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned about the attitude of the creator. I just wanted to or if you could double click on that, that'd be great. What exactly did you mean by the attitude of the creator? What is
First and
good
foremost, kindness.
negative?
I think people are just not kind. They lose their kindness, right? And the gaslighting attitude starts from the top, and then it always perpetuates. And I think that's where I draw a check. If I have been gaslit multiple times, I don't want to do that. I keep a check. It's a very natural reaction. So I think kindness is the biggest one, and then staying true to being a collaborator. We are not serving a mind, we are serving a script, and that's it. Once that script is locked, we'll all work towards making that piece most authentic and most prolific and more the best version of itself. We're not serving one individual. So that's what I look for. Truly collaborative.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we will take questions outside. We can all talk, as in depth with Apoorva. I want to wrap by saying a big thank you to you all. Thank you for joining in. And if you can join me in giving a huge round of applause. Thank you for sharing all the insights and all your reflections. I want to end by saying, I think in line with your variety article, there was a feature variety article on Apoorva recently. As Priyanka Chopra says it, Anurag Kashyap says it, Riti Mehta says it in the article. There is power in collaborating with people who will take you forward in telling the stories that matter. And I think you have lent a ear, offered a shoulder, and embraced hearts with those stories. I have been honored to witness that. But as we all see your journey unfold, I hope there are many more books that are dedicated to you. And in doing so, I hope we get to benefit from all that you learn in this journey. And thank you for greeting us here at the conference.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I look forward to our interactions. It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Okay, Apoorva Bakshi, everybody. Thank you.